This is Orange Nation Overtime with Steve Infante and Paulie Sibilia.
Welcome, everyone, to Orange Nation Overtime alongside Paulie Sibilia. I'm Steve Infante. We've made it to Thursday, and Thursday's a big day on our show, Paulie. During the football season, we generally have Fran Brown on. During the basketball season, we have Adrian Autry on. No Fran Brown today because of the bye week for the football team. We'll get with him next Thursday, but we did have Adrian Autry on the show. And we started the show today talking basketball. And you brought up a topic that comes up on this show every so often, and that is that inevitably, as the season moves along, fans a lot of times unnecessarily get on one particular player, and they call for whoever that player's backup is to get more time. You know, we saw it with Trevor Cooney. We saw it with Joe Girard, Scoop Jardine back in the day, especially early in his career. And you believe you have identified that player on this year's team.
Yeah, and I don't know why people are pointing at JJ. He hasn't even played, so we don't know if his game has dropped or gotten better in the offseason yet. I could see an argument for maybe Nate King's getting less time, but you got to let him play too and get his shots up and see if he's capable of knocking them down. It's way too early to be making judgments about anything.
And we saw this a little bit with Judah Mintz as well a couple years ago. Best player on the team, wasn't very efficient because they needed him to take a lot of shots, and I think we saw that with JJ last year. I looked it up on KenPom before we started the show, and JJ, when he was on the floor last year, took more than 32% of the shots. So essentially 1 out of every 3 shots going up was from J.J. Starling, and so his efficiency was hurt by that. I do think that this year, being around better players, they're not going to need him to do as much on offense. There's not going to be that pressure with 5 seconds on the shot clock, throw the ball to J.J., go make a play for us. That's not necessarily going to be the case this year. I think you're going to see a more efficient J.J. Starling this year, and hopefully, and I firmly believe we're going to see a better version of himself this year.
Yeah, and you just hope he can knock down the 3 when he's got open shots.
Yeah. And, defense as well. He's talked in the offseason, early in the year, on Media Day, he talked about the fact that he really committed himself to getting better defensively this offseason. And that's something that, yes, it's by design, but it's almost by necessity as well for this team as a whole. We see what Adrian Autry wants to do defensively. They want to get after you, and JJ, of course, wants to be a part of that. So, the player behind that wants more time, we haven't really talked about Kiyan here, but everybody thinks, Kiyan Anthony deserves more minutes. And based on the way he's playing right now, he probably does deserve some more minutes. Where are those minutes going to come from when JJ comes back? My guess is they probably come from Nate King's at the moment.
And it's also funny to see listeners say, hey, he should be playing more, but then complain that the strength of schedule has been really weak early on, too. Yeah. So they kind of go hand in hand.
That's a fair point. We did ask Adrian Autry about J.J. Starling. We'll hear his answer here coming up in a moment, but I let him off by asking Coach Autry what his takeaways were from these first 2 games against Binghamton and Delaware State.
I thought our concentration and our effort was really consistent. We didn't have a lot of dips. I thought our effort and energy, level 5 energy, was more consistent than our 2 preseason games, and I thought that was the difference.
It's obviously very early. You're only 2 games in, but one thing that Paulie and I have been talking about on the show is that there are certain things that we feel like we already know about this team, and I want to get your thoughts. And one of those things is it looks like this team is much better defensively than we've seen even just the last handful of years. I mean, do you feel that way as well when you see it every day at practice, and we've obviously seen what the games look like? Are you ready to say, this team defensively is the best that you've had to this point?
I think ability-wise, yeah, but, still a work in progress. But I like where we're at. We definitely have, it's probably the best defensive potential we've had since I've taken over. I thought my first year's team had that. I think we really needed that interior presence, which we lacked that towards the end of that year. But I think this team has those similar makeups of just the speed and the quickness and aggressiveness that you need to be a solid defensive team.
It's a perfect segue. I was going to ask you about William Kyle III, and you told us he was a really good player, and I think he's surprised a lot of us that he's not just a defensive player, but he's pretty skilled on the offensive end as well. He can finish around the basket, great in the pick and roll game. He's athletic. He gets up and down the floor. We've been very impressed by him. How much does he help what you guys are trying to do though on the defensive end? Obviously he had 6 blocks the other day.
Yeah, I think it's extremely important as our younger perimeter guys continually try to get better, so that when we do have those drives, that we can protect the basket. So it's really important, especially early on. Hopefully we won't have to depend on him as much as we continue to get better and work on it, and just have him, kind of still protect the rim and guard his position a little bit more. But you got to have the way we want to play with the level 5 energy that we're talking about, and gassing out and giving it your all on that defensive end. You're going to need some people to be able to back you up, because on the perimeter, we're going to try to be more aggressive than we have in the past.
Coach, when you look at your defense, what is it that worries you right now? We've talked about it's got better potential. What do you guys think you need to work on?
I think just collectively the communication. I think that's the biggest thing, continuing to talk to each other. We call it chatter. We got to continually be more connected, more chatter, more talking to each other. I think that's the biggest thing. I think that'll help us out a lot, and we got to get better at that. We're not quite there yet with that. And then finishing possessions with rebounds.
And you've done this with JJ playing all of 3 minutes. Obviously, he left very early in that opener against Binghamton. Can you give us any sort of update in terms of how he's doing, when you expect him back? What's the latest on JJ?
He's still day-to-day. It's a possibility that he could, be back with us early as Saturday. But we expect him back soon. He's a leader. He's a senior leader of this team. He's the guy that really is bought into the level 5 energy. The effort, he's a guy that is one of the fastest. He's blessed with athletic ability. So we're just looking forward to getting him back and continually getting better as a unit and as a team.
With him out, we've seen Kyan Anthony get some extra minutes, and he certainly made the most of those extra minutes. He's been very impressive through these first 2 regular season games. What have you liked most, Coach, about the way he's playing and really the way he's just handled this situation in general?
Well, I think the one thing about Kyan is that he understands that he has room for development, and I love that about him. Very, very receptive to improving it in some areas that he's continuing to improve on. But he's a very confident young player. He's highly good IQ. He can make plays. He's not just a scorer. I think those are all good traits that you have to be successful. Confidence and good IQ and understanding and feel for the game on both sides of the ball. And that's what I like. But he knows he knows he needs to still improve, and he's very receptive to coaching.
Coach, JJ, we've only seen him for a couple minutes so far this season, but last year, was he in positions last year where he had to take more shots and tough shots? And will this year's team help him be more efficient on the offensive end?
Yeah, I thought last year, we needed JJ to do a lot, and he had to really, like you said, Paulie, he had to make some things happen for order us to kind of hang around and have a chance. We needed him to play that way. I think this year, with the other players that we have around, I think it will allow him to be more efficient. I think you'll be able to see more of his game really this year. His passing, his playmaking, not taking better shots. I think you'll see that all kind of come to fruition this year with this team.
Obviously, Coach, we talk for 2 hours every day, so we have to talk about everything, and we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So the topic has come up about free throw shooting and 3-point percentage to this point. I know it's only 2 games in. Just curious to get your thoughts on: are there any concerns from either of those 2 areas, or do you look at it as it's an outlier, it's a small sample size, and we'll be just fine in those areas?
I really focus on the type of shots that we're getting, and I think if we continually get the right shots and the best best shots, we'll make them. But again, I said it from one of my press conferences and with this team, the offense will take care of itself if we get lost in the game and really worry about the other small things in the game. And I think all that will work itself out. We got really good shooters on this team. I'm not overly concerned. I think this team was put in a lot of work and was very excited and still is excited to play, in front of our home crowd. So it's some excitement there. So I think some of the free throws, you can chalk that up to some jitters, and I'm sure we'll make those. The three-point shots, it's really about trying to see if we can get some more, create some more, and take a little bit more. And I think they will fall as well. The shot selection is really what I'm really more concerned about. And we've taken good shots.
Coach, you talk about the level 5 and, just playing as hard as you can for 40 minutes. There's a bunch of players on this team that probably aren't used to being on the bench. And, how has the buy-in been from guys like Sadiq White and Kyan Anthony who are on the bench to start games?
I think when you play the way we want to play, you can't play you can't play for long periods of time. So we're all gonna, we all have made sacrifices. When we built this team, everyone knew we had to sacrifice. Next man up. We pull together. We're going to be one of the most connected teams in the country. Win, lose, whatever it is, whatever the result is, we're a family. We're going to stay together, and we spend a lot of time together. So, someone that's on the bench, he's in a fueling station, right? He's getting ready. He's getting ready to come in and give one of his brothers a rest, and then we just keep turning it like that. And that's our motto. That's our mindset.
Coach, let's turn our attention to the next opponent. You've got Drexel down in Philadelphia. Again, technically a neutral site game, but 5 miles from the Drexel campus. It happens to be in an arena, an NCAA tournament site this year. This Drexel team, I don't need to tell you this. They just made 15 threes the other night at Colgate, and they were down 19 at the half. They cut it to 2, put a scare in the Raiders down the stretch. What stands out to you from this Drexel team?
It's about the program. Drexel's a very good program. They've been a very good program and for a while. And a lot of it, you talk about this new transfer portal era. They probably lose 2 or 3 guys every year that transferred up to high majors at our level, Power 4 levels, and they all make an impact. So really good program, really good team, solid team. They will not be intimidated. They got some veterans, well coached, very good defensive team. So this will be, another challenge for us, and we're just looking forward to it.
You talk about the transfer portal era. It's also the net ranking era. How did you go about scheduling this game, and what did that play into it, and how you're playing all of your opponents so far?
Everything is different, so you have to get with the times, and we have an analytical team, and we sat down and we did like most schools. I think in the ACC most schools didn't do that. I think you see it this year. There's a method to everything. With everything being analytically driven, like you said, the net, and so those things are important. It's hard to make that tournament, and you can't make the tournament now just by the eye test. You have to have the analytics to back it up. So you got to put a pretty balanced schedule together, and then you got to go out and compete, and that's hard. It's easier said than done, and it's hard, but it's exciting, and that's what we did this summer.
I know the focus is on Drexel, as it should be. You got Drexel, then Monmouth, and of course we're all looking forward to Vegas, and I'm sure to some degree you're excited about Vegas as well. But there's some business to take care of before then. Between now and then, Coach, what are you looking for out of your team? What would you like to see the guys kind of shore up before you head out to Vegas to take on Houston?
To keep getting better, really, it's about our standard, and getting it to the standard that we want it to be, and that was just, the way we operate, the way we practice, the process. We talk about the process and do not focus on the results. So just getting more consistent in that and what we do inside this gym, and then going out and executing what we need to do. That's all that we're trying to do. It's not about the opponent. It doesn't matter who we play. It's not about the opponent. It's about us. And that's the focus, and that's the approach that we will have this whole year.
How do you keep your team from doing what my co-host just did and thinking about Houston already?
It's challenging. I mean, again, but this group right here, we're doing something together, and we're starting to see, a little bit of the effects of if we do this thing the way what we've been doing, we're starting to see the benefits of it. So we're just excited about each day. We stay in the day, stay in the moment. The future is the future. When we get there, we'll get there. And it's really just taking it one day at a time. Very cliche, very hard to do at times, especially in today's society. But we lock in every day. We punch it every day. We check. When we get here, it's about what we're doing today. So we prepare our guys and we talk with our guys every day about what today holds.
That's Adrian Autry. We'll have him on our show every Thursday at 1 o'clock throughout the rest of the college basketball season. You gave me a hard time about looking ahead to Vegas. The players and coaches can't look ahead to Vegas. They've got to take care of business against Drexel, against Monmouth, and then they can worry about Houston. We can talk about that, and I think if we're all being honest, we're not truly going to know just how good this team is until we see what they look like out there in that tournament.
Yeah, but you got to get there first, and you want to be rolling when you get there, and you can't look ahead and slip up. Like they say, the trap game, Steve. You can't have any trap games. Beat everybody handily, and let's see match up against Houston and Kansas, and we'll use that as the measuring stick moving forward.
Drexel, by the way, again, we talked about it with Coach Autry, down big at the half against Colgate on Tuesday, down 19, and then they couldn't miss from three-point range in the second half, made 15 threes as a team, cut it to 2, and then Colgate ended up hanging on and winning that game. But it's a scrappy team, hard-working team. We've joked that I know their head coach, Zach Spiker, is a former college teammate of mine, and it's not a neutral site game. I mean, it is, I guess by the letter of the law, but, that arena is 5 miles from the Drexel campus. So this will feel like a road game. And it's also, an NCAA tournament site this year, that arena down in Philadelphia. So a chance for, again, that's the goal for the Orange. They played in Buffalo. They're going to play in Philly, 2 of the NCAA tournament sites. And that, of course, is the hope this year for Adrian Autry and the Orange.
That's right, Steve. And you can catch Coach Autry, TK99 tonight. Coach Autry Show with Matt Park there, and you can also catch it on Cuse.com if you want to watch it.
Speaking of Matt Park, we didn't just talk basketball on the show today. We have Matt Park, the voice of the Orange, on our radio show every week as well, every Thursday at 1:30. And we talked a little football with Matt Park, so let's hear some of that interview now. And I led off Matt by asking him, of course, about the quarterback situation. If he was Fran Brown, if he was the head coach, how would he handle the quarterback situation for these last 2 games?
Probably Ricky Collins, just as my regular guy. Just let it go. The best of not great options. I don't think any of them have a future here necessarily. So try to put the one that frame up the rest of the game for somebody else to succeed. If you like Luke Carney, you want to play him in the BC game, go for it. Want to give Joe Filardi a shot. I think it's great, but none of those guys have shown enough that you can feel super confident in them. I think the Collins has the highest ceiling, at least in terms of what they can exhibit this month, right? I mean, maybe one of those 2 other guys is better in the very long haul. But I know you guys you probably asked this, is next year's backup quarterback on the team right now? I don't think so.
Yeah. How about the importance of this game against BC? I know they got to play Notre Dame first, but somebody called us the other day and said, does this game matter? Does the BC game matter? How do you address that? Obviously the win-loss total is what it is this year, whether they beat BC or not. Is there something to be said, though, for sending the seniors out with a win and momentum for the returning players as they head into the offseason, or do you not really subscribe to, that whole momentum piece of it?
I don't know how much momentum it would be other than you don't have quite the unsightly, whatever that would be, 8-game losing streak. Every game matters, some more than others. There's always something on the line. I think they can and will and should beat BC, and it'd be a bad look not to. the perception of BC is that they're so down in football and basketball both that losing them at home looks like a real stain on what you're doing. That being said, the big elephant in the room here, of course, is how representative are you of anything with the quarterback situation such as it is right now? So there's absolutely something to play for. Easy for me to say it's not that big a deal, but people who have put on the uniform and do the bleeding and the sweating and all that, they really do think of that win for the seniors. They are motivated by that. They want the seniors to leave with a better taste in their mouth than losing to BC or a long season-ending losing streak would be. So always something to play for. The games all mean something when it comes down to it.
All right, let's switch gears. Let's talk hoops now. And, we've seen Adrian Autry's squad go out there and do what they were supposed to do, right, against Binghamton and Delaware State. Have you seen enough, Matt, that, you're maybe even more encouraged through these two games than you were, prior to the season starting? Or is it one of those that everybody needs to pump the brakes and wait until Vegas comes and see what they look like against top-notch competition?
Well, I think that's always the way it was going to be. I think you're going to know more about your team coming out of that stretch here in a couple of weeks than Binghamton or Delaware State are going to reveal. We've talked about it before. The way the schedule is set up, there's a number of games where you're going to be a big favorite, and you've got to deliver on that. You've got to win by 20 plus. And I think they will. I think they've demonstrated that so far. I'm not really surprised by anything we've seen so far. They've played a couple of, 300 plus net teams, and they've knocked them around and they've dominated physically and athletically and shut them down on the defensive end. If the other team you're playing makes 1 3-pointer, you're probably going to beat them and beat them by a lot in today's game. So I'm encouraged by what I've seen, but I think it's on par with what we thought this was going to be on paper and just how everything lined up. I think once you see them against Houston and Kansas and that third game in Vegas and Tennessee, and I know we'll be talking throughout all of that, then you're going to have a much more representative picture.
From an individual perspective, has there been anybody who surprised you with man, this kid's better than I thought? Is it Cayenne? Is it William Kyle, Nathan George? I mean, we obviously knew, JJ and Donnie. We haven't seen JJ other than 3 minutes in the regular season opener. But is there anyone that's truly kind of opened your eyes through the first couple of games?
Yeah, a couple. I mean, I would just say we know going in this year, the approach was to be better athletically. And they have been. And then in what ways does that show up? Right, so William Kyle and Sadiq White, that's how it shows up. Kyle, and by Cayenne obviously fits in your category there, but I don't think what he's doing is jaw-dropping or, oh my gosh, I never could have possibly seen this coming. I think you knew of his maturity and polish coming in, and maybe he has exceeded expectations a little bit in that he hasn't seemed to have had yet a freshman moment. But maybe that comes. Maybe there's a lull somewhere, maybe not, So I think Cayenne you set aside, and there's a lot of reason to be excited about him. To answer your question, let's put the spotlight on William Kyle for a second. I remember thinking, whether I said it on the air or not, during maybe the Binghamton game, I think this is off the air, but we'll say it now. I turned to Eric and I said, Mick Cronin couldn't find a way to use this guy? 6'9" and jumps out of the gym. You got no use for that, or no way to put them in position to thrive. He makes it look easy, right? He scores at the rim, and he protects the rim on the defensive end. So I think he's exciting in that he's an element that we haven't seen around here in a minute. And, is he going to be the greatest center of all time? I think it's pretty far-fetched to say that 2 games into the season, but I am excited to see where it goes, and just the athleticism of this team is right now the calling card, and it was meant to be, and let's see how it plays out, but it's fun to watch so far.
That's Matt Park, voice of the Orange again. He joins us 1:30 on our Orange Nation radio show every Thursday throughout the football and basketball seasons. And you guys will be down in Philadelphia this weekend, beginning tomorrow. You won't be on the show tomorrow. You got any big plans for while you're down there?
It sounds like Park's going to take us out for cheesesteaks. I just volunteered him.
That's what you got to do when you're in Philadelphia.
I volunteered him to buy me a cheesesteak. Steve, do you know? I did this to you yesterday with Oscar the Grouch.
Yeah.
Do you know what color Bluey, is that his name? Bluey from Blue's Clues was originally.
Oh, from Blue's Clues you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, so no, he's just Blue. No, Blue and Bluey are two different things.
Blue.
Just from Blue's Clues.
Yes.
What's the question?
What color was he originally going to be? Because he was not even going to be a dog.
Really?
Yes.
Really? Well, I know Steve, the main character, the original Steve, I believe wore green. So I will say green.
Blue is going to be orange.
Really?
Also, he's going to be an orange cat. But according to the writers, they realized Nickelodeon was already working on a series about a cat. So
interesting.
They made it audible, and from there, I think it worked out for him.
It worked out very well. And correct me if I'm wrong, Paulie, nothing rhymes with orange. So Blues Clues, like that goes. But what were they going to do with orange?
I have no idea. So there you go.
All right, now I'm going to look that up the rest of the day. All right, we got to go. Thanks for joining us on Orange Nation Overtime. For Paulie Sibilia, I'm Stephen Fonte. We will have a show tomorrow. Paulie just won't be a part of it. It'll be myself and Mario Sacco on the show. Enjoy the rest of the day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.